Bobby Schnars, superstar. My God, we're great. We said bring greetings from lots of people. Squirt Johns.
Great.
Marv Thorpe. We've had a chance to talk to Eddie Kisco today. We've talked to Jerry Frank.
Yeah.
And they've all, part of a world. And I know you saw and a little bit of what we did on the Rollable project.
Yes.
And actually walked with us. Thank you for that Rollable tour. I know you didn't have a chance to have a race there, but that was a fun day for all of us.
Sure.
And then we actually turned it into a documentary on Rollable, getting those old conversations together. And so we thought we'd do something on the first 10 years of State Line Speedway, and there's nobody more symbolic of those golden eras than the great Bobby Schnars. So it doesn't get any better than this for us. Was racing part of the Schnars family? Was that part of your mom and dad's background at all?
No. I don't know why. I was just, well, I got started hot rodding a neighbor's tractor when we were down there on the farm. And I don't know, just had an interest in mechanical things, at an early age.
Did you have any other, was your dad interested in this stuff at all?
Nope, he never.
What did he do for a living?
Now?
Well, what did your dad do?
He was a carpenter.
Carpenter? So handy with his hands and...
Yeah.
And...
I don't know, I had a grandfather, lived across the road here now. This was before my time. I know my grandfather, but I guess he sold cars, used cars and stuff back in the, oh gosh, early 30s or somewhere around in there, years and years ago. So maybe some of that, interest originated there. I don't know.
When did you start racing? What do you recall about when, Bob?
I was trying to think that out now, whether it would have been, I don't know, it was, I'm going to say 1955, maybe. I drove my first race at a racetrack down outside of Kane called Highland Speedway. And I think I'm not sure if I raced there more than once, but I did at least once, I know. And I didn't finish last. I passed the one guy to get out of last place. I fought like hell. I wasn't no instant success,
Well, really, when you think about it, that first time you're actually out there on the track, and there's competition. There is somebody out there trying to knock you around, you knock him around. It's a race. What's the adrenaline rush?
Oh man, it's well, it's kind of a deal. I didn't really have much to do with building this first car, but I hung around there all the time with the guys, and well, during the week I'd think I'd probably wanted to race, and then I'd get there at the racetrack. I wasn't quite pushing it, so. But the guy that was driving, he decided he didn't want to, or was going to let me drive, so I didn't get a start in the heat race. I started in the feature, the very first one I started in, and if I remember right, I was like about third or fourth back on the inside of the starting lineup, So we come around, and geez, it was roaring there. The cars was making my car vibrate even. So I thought, well, I'm not gonna, dive right into that first corner wildly and spin out or anything. I'm gonna take it a little bit cautious going in there. Well, there was somebody behind me that was ready to go. They gave me a boot in there. I went out and hit the guy that's on the outside of me, and I dove to the inside, and by that time there was a couple more coming through in there. And by the time we got to the end of the backstretch, I was last. I had to fight back.
Oh, God. So
that was something, yeah. What
does Bill Sperry mean to you?
Well, he owned that first car that they put together. He'd bought it had a 270 GMC truck engine in it that came out of a guy's car here from Busti, Ralph Bodka was his name. And that was built up for him, I think, by was a guy who lived over to Sugar Grove, maybe. I don't know if anybody knows him. Ed Peterson was a small guy. He worked on trucks and stuff, and so that's where the motor come from. Bill bought the motor, and another fellow, Glenn Coons, built the car. So Bill just drove it a little bit, and then he really didn't care that much for driving. I guess Bill's still around, I know, still. So I don't know. That's where I got started at it anyway.
How did he connect with you? Did you know him, a family friend?
Well, we all hung out down here at the gas station in Bustye. Really was, you know, we probably schemed up a lot of things down there.
Who owned that station now? Was that Siggins?
Archie Lane.
Archie Lane.
Lane, yeah. Quinny Lane, you know Quinny Lane?
Oh, sure. I know his son Gary.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So that'd be Gary's grandpa?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you, the number M1, I mean, when you think Bobby Schnars, you immediately think M1. How did M1 come to be?
Well, Bill Sperry had that number, and it came from the Army rifle, the M1 rifle.
Oh.
So I don't know, he just, you know, he needed a number. I just kind of hung with that number from.
Well, it certainly, that's what you're recognized as. Were there other numbers in your career that you drove?
Well, one sometimes,
Yeah.
you know, a lot simpler to paint on there.
True.
And when they had the NASCAR race at State Line up there, I think it was 150 lapper or something, they put it down as 916 because the car I had was a 56 Chevy, and I hadn't never raced it yet. I was racing the Oldsmobile, and well, that Chevy wasn't as beat up. You know, the Olds had got pretty well beat up, and this was supposed to be a big NASCAR race. So the State Line guys wanted me to go down and get that car because they lacked cars. And that had one door off from it. It came out from Dean Layfield's car. It was 9/16 said on the door. You know, it wasn't painted or anything, and so they put it 916. They called the number for the car then. And I always remembered it just had a 2-barrel carburetor. I'd got this Chevy together, and I bought a motor out of the wrecking yard. It was just you know, it's the only thing I could find locally. It was a 60 or 56 Chevy, had a 2-barrel engine on it. And I didn't even have exhaust pipes, as I remember. I think it came right out of the headers, and I was up there. I just, you know, stayed out of trouble and ended up finishing like 11th or 10th or something there. I was a lot of laps behind, but that's how that 916 number, where that came from.
You know, it's interesting. We've heard something about that NASCAR race as you raced against, you know, some of the bigger names. Was there any awe factor at all that you're on the track with a Lee Petty and other guys like that?
Well, yeah, there wasn't a lot of NASCAR cars that showed up.
Okay.
It was Lee Petty was here, and I think there was a couple guys like from Buffalo. Seemed like the guy's name was like Len Page, and somebody else maybe came down from Buffalo, and some guys out of Erie, I think, had you know, brand new cars in, like, or had started out being brand new cars. Mine had, you know, came from the wrecking yard. But it was mainly Lee Petty, and the guy that won was Shorty Rollins. Mm-hmm. And I like Bob Dool and some of them, but I really wasn't in the race with them. Squirt Johns and Lee Petty had a pretty close race. As I remember, you know, I'd see them when they come back when they was laughing at me. So, but I really wasn't even wasn't fast at all. You know, really, the rear end wasn't locked or anything like that.
Well, let's flash back a little bit. Here you are in Bustye, and you had to have, as an early, couldn't help but hear the noise up in Bustye. Did you race there year 1, 1956? Do you recall?
No, I didn't, but I was there for the first race. I didn't race. The the second year I did. But
57.
not, well, the first year they didn't get started till late in June, I think, anyway. So that was a pretty short season anyway. And we had another race car that we raced at Smithport. I believe it was that year. I'd assume that was in like 1956. And but it was 50. But the following year I did race up there. But we had, I think, in '56 also. See, they raced at Skyline to start with, and then Don and Jerry and Lloyd and them split off from there and went up here and built this racetrack. Well, the guy up there, they decided, I think this was like that the same year that State Line opened, to run some modified races. Again, that's what they'd been running at Skyline before. And so we had a modified car. It's a couple of kids down at Bust-I here bought the car.
I'm going to stop you just for a second because this is an educational thing. When we heard the term late model, then we hear modified. What's the difference?
Well, the modified was an old 37 Chevy Coupe.
Okay.
You know, and the first one that Bill Sperry had a GMC truck, but the second one had an Olds 88, like it was a 51 Olds 88 engine in it, I think. And we ran quite well over there. I'm surprised I had seen the scrapbook there. I'd even forgot that we'd, I think they only ran like 3 times that year, maybe. But it was with that same car also that we went up to Cuba to the racetrack there one time. It was Ernie Schuyler and Bobby Morrison owned that car. And we towed it up to Cuba. I don't know what the deal was, if it was a big race or what, but we got up there and there wasn't any one of us guys that was 21 years old. They wouldn't even let us in the pits. we never got to run at all.
Oh my gosh. What a hoot. What was the first year when you're going up to State Line, what was the reputation of the track? I mean, there's a new track. Did the guys get together and have comment as to the condition of the track and anything like that?
I think everybody was just happy to have some place to race, probably. I don't remember any comment, you know. I know they was always working on it. Of course, they just go up there and check on it too, you know. Every night see what they was doing, probably working on it. I can remember when they was building it, where the parking lot is out there now, it was just, they had, you know, some of the brush cut out of there already. But there was thorn brush and scrub brush that it was pulling. There wasn't any sign of a racetrack yet, other than maybe some stakes out there or something. So it took a while before we went, you know, figured out what the layout was going to be.
Yeah. Did they ask you guys as potential drivers what the layout should look like? Was there any input from the drivers?
Well, they didn't ask me. They might have. Kenny Johnson was a big. He was kind of their publicity agent, I think, or something in the very early days. So he may have had something to do with laying it out.
Those first few years, was there a race driver or two that was sort of the guys you looked up to, or your idols, or was there standouts?
Well, when they first started, of course, Emery was a big runner, and I'm not sure, I believe Squirt was there the first year, but Dean Layfield, Dean used to like to turn the cars sideways about at the flag stand and went around there, and I thought that was the fast way around, you know, so I kind of idolized him in the early days.
Well, talk about Dean Layfield a little bit. You know, we've heard the name a lot, and of course he died early, prematurely. What was it about Dean Layfield that made people even remember today about him?
I don't know. He was kind of a showman. I know when he was leading, he'd be looking in the stands some of the time when he was sliding around the corners. And before, I hope I got this right, I'm pretty sure it was Dean that they ran down to, like, Bradford Speedway was there before. I don't know if it was there before State Line opened, but I think so. Not the Bradford Speedway that's there now, but there was an old one over there. And it seems to me like Dean then I know he used to, like to run around there with it sliding, but he had the exhaust stuck right up through the hood a ways there. They called it Tempest in the Teapot or something. I'm pretty sure that was Dean. Time escapes you. Maybe it was somebody else, but I think it was. He had like a Mercury, 55 Mercury, I believe. So, I don't know. I just kind of...
Well, that was the sense we got, that he didn't mind self-promote. Was that your sense, that he was out there?
Yeah, and then they, him and Dean and Jim Patrick, might have been more in it, they started what they called the Independent Racing Association there at, I'm not sure what year that would have been, 57, 8 in there somewhere probably. So yeah, he must have been kind of I think he owned the Lincoln Mercury dealer in Wellsville. So, but.
Well, he too had a distinctive number.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Great.
What does a Squirt Johns mean to a Bobby Schnars?
Well, Squirt was the guy, Dean there, he ran really good for like the first year or so. I'm not sure when he got killed, but well, I guess in 58 he built a new Chevy to take to Daytona, and that 58 Chevy never really was not that great of a race car. So then Squirt, after that, Squirt was the guy to beat. Squirt had an ability to miss the wrecks too, and I seemed to find them. I could go like hell, but I'd run into somebody. So that was he was Squirt was far and away the guy to. Although the first year or two, Emery was a threat to win. He had that fuel injected Chevy. I think it kept burning pistons. But if the car held up, Emery would win. But Squirt was great. I think he learned me how to get around state line. Squirt always slowed down a little bit coming into the corner. I figured out finally, instead of, I wanted to be like Dean Layfield. I'd throw it up toward the fence and throw it into the corner. And of course, then when the wreck was, I was already coming in flat out, going sideways. Wasn't much I could do. And Squirt's style was a lot better for missing the wrecks.
What was his style?
Well, he just was smooth about it. He'd come up and he'd slow down. He liked to run the inside, and he just made sure he got traction coming off the corner. And he just never got excited. I guess he was very smooth about the thing. We tried, a lot of years before we could beat him.
Well, then obviously you did start beating him, and you obviously won more races than anybody in the history of State Line. Was there sort of a time, Bobby, as you were working on your car or cars, where you kind of said, I think I got it? That aha moment where I'm going to get a little bit of an edge, or I have an edge?
About every week, I think. We used to think that. Until we got to the racetrack.
That is a pure racer talking right there. I know what he's talking about.
And especially every winter, you think you got it figured,
But was there something unique that kind of must have given you an edge? Because clearly...
Well, I think, if anything, or the biggest thing that helped me is, I worked as a mechanic in the garage. I could do about everything. I worked on my own car, and I did the driving, so I didn't have anybody to, have different ideas. Usually I tried what I wanted to try, and I think that's probably is a big advantage.
You're at success at State Line, and State Line at the time was owned by a couple of folks, and Leonard Briggs. What's Leonard Briggs to Bob Schnars?
Well, he was always against us, so these guys, every time we come up with some new idea, he didn't think we'd ought to be using it. Well, not every time. But no, Len was a great guy, especially after, he he was like your teacher in school or something, you know. You didn't really like him because he made you stay in line.
When you say that, staying in line,
we liked him.
What was the discretion where the track owner would impact the track driver? What could he do to...
Well, what they did in the early days was State Line tried to have the rules the same as NASCAR, where you had to have, you know, you had to have your windshield in there. You couldn't cut the wheel wells out. You had to have your inner wheel liners in there, and the windshields was the biggest thing. They fought to get rid of them because it was hard to, you know, the dirt tracks just peppered them with we'd drive around all over the country to the Chevy dealers and or you know, GM dealers or car glass, try to get the windshields they'd taken out. You know, a lot of places they'd give them to you, or you'd donate a little bit to their coffee fund or something. But we fought for the longest time to get that, because you'd, like, if you'd try to go to race against the guys down in Pennsylvania or somewhere, they had the wheel wells all cut out and they was running on, you know, 12 or 13 inch tires, so it made it tough to go anywhere else. And but of course they had, you know, they had good looking cars and everything up there. Is what they, you know, they was looking to put people in the stands, and we was looking to make it cheap for us.
Yeah. On race day, how did they set up the lineups? You know, for the finals, was it the fastest car up front? How did that work?
Well, they used to, in the early days, I think, just went off the top of their head what they thought, you know. I know quite often, like the heat races, I don't know how they come with that lineup, but if you didn't do very good in the heat, then you got a pretty good start in the semi. They ran semis too. The heat was 8 laps. I think the semi was 12 laps, and then they kind of based off of that how you'd ran in those races where you started. Later years they started going off the points, and they had one time the last 3 previous races or something. But then if it went like it was a 50 lap, then they went for the last 3 between the 2 racetracks or something. It was hard to figure it out, but they, you know, in later years I always knew where I was going to start.
The back. Did you find that your success, and it was incredible success, I don't want to say ever worked against you, because obviously continued success, but that they tried to make it more difficult for you to win every week? When you have so much success, they'd like to make it as competitive as possible. Yeah. Did you give any sense of that, Bob?
Oh yeah, but of course they would have for everybody, I guess. But yeah, I see more through it now than I did then, because everybody's bitching about it if you're winning, you know. So they're trying to figure out some way of but it was the same for everyone, I guess.
We're looking at an Oldsmobile here. What's the significance of this vehicle?
Well, I had one in 1958, I think it was, that I raced. As the same thing, 2-door hardtop like that, and the same color combination too, black and white. So I ran into this one time. I was thinking of getting an old antique car to play with. So, and then this one was a standard shift too. They was most of your Olds 88s was automatic transmissions in them in the early days. So that sold me on it. So I ended up, I think I've had it about 10 years now. And of course, the old engines there, I had some, you know, I ran on the road. I didn't do all of my racing at the Speedway either in the early years.
Really? Thank God for the statute of limitations.
Yeah.
Tell me about Tom Dill.
The biggest thing I can remember about Tom was he was a little wild, but I never had any problem with Tom Dill myself. I used him to my advantage, really. If I was behind him, Tom could clear the way out to get up through there, and you know, I'd try to follow him. So, no, I always got along good with Tom. Matter of fact, one time I forget what I did. I bumped him, put him in a fence, and he wasn't too happy about it. I think it was at State Line there one time. I didn't do it intentionally, but he, I don't know, he never got even with me for it, so I guess it was okay.
Probably couldn't catch you.
Oh yeah, he could. He ran great at times.
Well, what you've just said is a very common denominator with all of our conversations when we talk about Tom Dill. They all kind of have the same reaction, because at some point you had to pass him. I mean, you may have followed him for a while, but at some point you had to pass him. I sense that he ran aggressive.
I don't remember him. I don't really remember it. You know, that stands out in my mind that I ever had a problem with Tom.
What about Jim Polaro?
Yeah, Jimmy was. Gosh, what would I remember about Jimmy?
Well, during that time period, there were a couple.
I don't remember anything bad.
There are two guys. Well, let's talk about Frank Ruhlman, who put 3 cars on the track at one time and had great success. Why was there success with Frank's cars? What made that sort of distinctive?
Well, one of the things that really helped him he was smart, you know, to know that the weight was a benefactor to you in the early days. And of course he worked on them, kept them maintained, so, you know, so they didn't break down. But the big thing was the weight factor. He built them light, and I always remember, I can tell a story about that too, because in my, this was in the 60s, I guess now. But anyway, I had or used them for a while, a Lincoln radiator. They was out of about a 1950-51 Lincoln. And they was about that thick, with a big old radiator in there, you know. And the cars always got hot anyway. Well, Frank, he was sharp. He used just a little regular Chrysler radiator, and he soldered a copper ring around there, like a 5/16 tubing, right on the face of the radiator core. And then he ran it very close to the fan, so if the fan jumped up and got in there, it didn't gouge into the radiator. We hadn't got into the shrouds yet. But I remember it was, and then too, he just had a tea kettle for filling the radiator. Well, I was pouring water there, and mine was steaming like I'll never forget. Frank says, "God, Bob, you got a lot of water in there, but it's all boiling," he said. So he was, you know, he was smart to that fact too, because he didn't want that big radiator. I don't think it's too heavy, you know. Geez, that radiator, I hate to guess what that weighed, and then full of water. You know, he was looking at something small so that it didn't weigh too much.
What did he do? Did he have a garage? What was
yeah, he had a garage down to Youngsville, small garage. I'm not sure what he did. He did a little bit of everything, like you know, build stuff for people. I don't think it was a regular commercial garage like you'd take your car to the. I think you had to know Frank in order to get him to work on it for you. But you know, I don't really know whether he used to go down there once in a great while. I always kicked myself in the chins for the first car he built there, and I'm not sure what year it was. It was a '55 Chevy anyway. It's real light. Hyle Russell ended up driving it. And I was working there, and some guy stopped and was talking to me about it. He says, "Well, you ought to go down and see that car Frank Roman's building down there." He says, he's looking for somebody to drive that. He says he's going to drive it himself, but I know he's not going to. Well, I didn't pay much attention to that. Well, then, Jesus, it turned out that was the best car there was on the track that year. But I don't know whether he probably wouldn't have put some kid in there, you know.
That was number 4? Was that the
yeah. Yeah.
The fabulous number 4 we've been reading?
Yeah, I think that's in this that audio thing, the record that I got. Yeah. He was in that race.
What about Heil Russell? There are two guys from Kane, Heil Russell, and we of course talked to Eddie Kisco today. What was their reputation on the tracks?
Well, I don't know. They both was good runners, but I think Heil ran down to Smithport in that earlier years too. So I don't know how to answer that. Is
Yep.
Both good guys, and good runners.
Ronnie Blackmer was the young guy of that team.
Yeah.
And you ran against him a lot.
In the new cars, not in the. Ronnie was in the Sportsman there for years before that. Yeah.
Of course, he had a reputation in the Sportsman like you did in the late model. Neither of you guys could get beat very much.
Oh, he had a lot better reputation than I did. Ronnie used to win everything: the heat, the semi, and the feature. He was disappointed if he didn't get all three of them in a night.
It was, I mean, that competitive spirit that I'm sure all of you have. At some point, Ronnie must have felt nobody wanted him to ever win again. I mean, it was just you win so much.
Yeah, after a while.
Did you have that same feeling? Did you hear the boos?
Oh, toward the end, yeah. They used to tell me, well, why the hell don't you let somebody else win once in a while? Guys, I think, Jesus, what I come here for. I work on it all week. I was going to tell you a story about Ronnie, too. And because Ronnie started his racing career over there at Rollerball, I think. Mm-hmm. I don't know if he had told you this, but he told me one time, and it was just in the last few years he told me about it, that he went over there and, well, Ronnie was dating Frank's daughter, I guess, is how he got Frank and him together to build that race car. And so he went over there, and Ronnie said, I don't know, he went out and he come in and I don't know what he got. Or fifth or something. He says, Frank told him, he says, well, my God, I thought you was going to floor the goddamn thing when we got up here. He said, I didn't know he was just going to go out there and pussyfoot around like that. Ronnie said the next time he went out, he figured he was going to show him. He held it on the floor till he ended up the bank on the backstretch or something, he said. So Frank must have been a little bit of a prod to get him going.
Were you on the track the time when Eddie Kisco had that really bad wreck?
Yeah.
Do you remember much about that?
Well, the only thing I kind of remember is the car was laying upside down, and we went over there, and it was kind of, I didn't get it right in the way. It was laying down, and I figured he was dead, and then I don't know if they picked it up a little bit or he come out the windshield or something. Every when he come crawling out of there, he was all right.
Well, obviously, as long as you've raced, there must have been a time or two where you were involved, or there was a scary moment, if you will, where you lost control or somebody else lost control. Do you recall such an event?
I never had to. I tipped over on the fence down the backstretch one time that I can remember quite vividly, because I kind of dove it to the outside. It was going to throw it for the corner, and when I dove out there to throw it, Marty Rader had stuck his nose up there, and that put my nose into the fence, and I tumbled down there in front of the beer stand there. That's all I ended up on my wheels, and I was lucky. That's the only time I was. I guess the first year in that old green car, I tipped over in the third turn down there. It had a flat tire going into the corner, and it dumped over. But I was always lucky.
Is there a race or two where you sit back and say, boy, that's the one I really wanted to win, and I won, and I feel really good about? That you won 75 races at State Line, and how many? 79, and you'd say,
I don't really know any that stands out. There was some of the 150 lappers we let get away from us. But, other than that, no, I don't. Nothing stands out in the mind.
It's funny, you remember the ones that got away.
Yeah.
For all the wins you had, that's always the one or two or three that God, I should have had that.
Well, you speak about Squirt Johns. Do I remember? I think this was in like, it was in the 60s, I think, 61 or 2 or something. Well, we had some kind of a small gas tank in it, and it was going to be the 100 lapper at the end of the year, so I went and got a full-size gas tank out of a car at the wrecking yard and mounted it into the trunk. I don't know, we've done a lot of other things, put new tires on it and everything, but put that gas tank in there, and I ran about, I think I went 4 laps before the fuel line started plugging up. It had a mouse nest in that gas tank in it. I missed the 100 lapper at the end of the year. And Squirt also one time, it was I think it was a 50 lap race or something. Well, that's one that, or no, it was, I think that was Tom Dale. Maybe it was Floyd Finelli. Tom Dale, I think, it was one of Busink's cars anyway. We come up the front straightaway to get the flag going, and Busink's car up there didn't go. And they started stacking up, and I ran right in the back end of Squirt, and somebody hit me in the back end, and I had to fan through the radiator before I got to the flag stand on a 50-lap race one night. Stands out.
Well, you also, one of your, if not your first win, was one where you didn't know that you actually had won, where there was a miscount on the...
That was the first one.
Yeah. How'd that work?
Well, I don't know. They had only ran 20. What did they do? They ran 1 lap short. I guess they
ran
one too many. I guess they ran 26 laps,
right.
And I was leading on 20 on white flag lap, in other words, and the drive shaft come out, the rear universal joint broke. So that's what it was.
Then the cars passed you, and you kind of limped in 4th place, you thought.
I didn't go far. I don't remember much about it other than that it went too far, and it was Heil Russell, I think, won the race, and they said they talked to Frank Roman and Heil, and I think they ended up paying them the same, paid us both for first place, but they said sure, you know, as long as
So that must have been a surprise when all of a sudden.
Oh yeah,
you're
yeah,
mad
especially the first one you ever won, you know.
Yeah, you'd like to take a lap, right, with the checkered flag, and you couldn't do it. Was there a time, Bob, when, with all the success you had, where you kind of woke up one morning and said, you know, I don't have it anymore, and I'm just going to be done with this and retire? You know, was there that mental?
Yeah, last couple of years, just got sick of working on it all the time, it seemed like, and you know, I said, I might as well get out of here while I'm still winning.
Yeah.
Not going to hang around, and you know, that's a tough. Racing is a tough deal. Everything's got to work for you. It isn't like a golfer where he just goes out and does the swing and he's got control over it. In a race car, you know, you might be the best driver in the world, and you don't have a car. You only got about a 10th place car. That's what you're going to end up, you know. So, yeah, I just get sick of working on them all the time, really. I spent 20 years every Saturday night at the speedway up there, you know.
What was a normal week for Bobby Schnars? You'd race on Saturday night and then go to Erie's, and you'd race Sunday night. And then what happened Mondays through Fridays?
Well, I worked on the car. I worked in the garage like for Jim Raid for a while, and up at the Rambler garage in Lakewood during the winter, but it come summertime I was off, you know, just worked on the race car here, and I'd work on, you know, my friends' cars, might say customer cars or something a little bit. So then some of the time there we was racing, like they ran at Wattsburg there on Friday nights, and one year we went down to Smithport some, and I think that was on a Friday nights. But I don't know, it keeps you, at least it kept me busy. There's always something on a race car that is never done. There's always something you think you'd ought to try, or something.
Were you pretty much the chief mechanic of your own car, or did you have somebody?
Most of the time, yeah. I did drive one year for Schultz Gauger in 1970. Tony White and Jimmy Fardink maintained the car, and I just went up and checked in once in a while, see what they was doing. But then, I don't know, Gage got out of the dealership with Schultz shortly after they started it, and the following year, Schultz just didn't really see his way clear to have a race car, so we kind of got away from that.
What were the economics of it all? Did you make a living at this in the summer?
Well, I did, yeah. Yeah, I kind of looked at it as a living through the summertime. So I think that's why I lost interest in it too, when it became a deal where it's going to cost you more to race than what it could bring in, you know. So yeah.
Do you go up there now? Bobby, do you go sit and watch?
I went there once this year. Was their last race? Dick got second, I think, or something. I don't know if it was the very last one. I went down to Little Valley with Tom. Last race he ran, he didn't have anybody to go with him, and he ran about a lap and a half in hot laps, and the connecting rod come out through the side of the block there.
Take a look at that.
Yeah,
that's pretty impressive.
I never seen one come apart like that either, where it didn't knock ruin the oil pan or bash the camshaft, all the pieces in there or something.
Is it hard? Is it hard for a guy who's had so much success to just be a fan in the stand and just watch?
Well, yeah, I think that you get strange ideas. You go up there too much. You get funny ideas. You gotta stay away from there. You think, geez, that wouldn't take too much.
Is that something, once you retired, did you later on ever have that urge on a Saturday morning saying, I can still do this?
No, not too much, really.
We read today, it was an article that Eddie Kisco had about I guess 1983 was a veterans race, an old-timers game, for lack of a better term. Were you involved in that at all today?
I think so, yeah.
Where it looked like Squirt and Eddie and...
Not Squirt, but Eddie and Emery were there, and we couldn't figure out who else was in the race that night.
Yeah, I think I was there. Well, I'm sure I was. But see, I hadn't been away from racing too long then. Right. So, matter of fact, I think I won that race with driving Chubb's. What do they call them? Cadets or something? Or
well, I thought they were. The article we read had you guys in late models, because Kisco was driving one of the Hoffman's cars. But you thought it was cadets, huh?
Yeah, it was.
Okay.
It was. Pretty sure it was.
Well, in '83, Chubb would have been in like a limited late model.
Yeah, it was a limited thing.
Okay.
Now they might have. I think they was all limited.
Okay.
Cars that they drove, but I'm not sure about that now.
What do you miss? What do you miss from the track? What's that?
I don't know. I remember Buddy Baker there one time. They asked him when AJ Foyt didn't come to Daytona if he missed AJ, and he said, well, it was just like missing out on the Hong Kong flu or something. I don't really miss too much. You miss all the guys, of course, the friendships. Yeah.
Do you stay in touch with some of the guys?
Yeah, some, of course, it's been a lot of years now.
Yeah.
So most of them are gone. They're not even around anymore. A lot of the guys that helped me on the cars to begin with, Tony White and Chuck Van Gilder and Jimmy Morrison, and they've all passed away. Of course, Frosty there owned the car and helped me for a lot of years. He's gone. So.
That's Forsberg, right?
Yeah. A lot of them are passed on.
Now, was he the principal sponsor or principal backer behind this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
From like 70, what? 73, I don't think, 74 on. 74 on.
Guys, questions for this superstar?
Bob, at some point you started racing the sportsman cars, and that was about that same time you're talking about with Frosty, I think, right? Didn't Frosty build the first sportsman car that
First
you
one I
raced?
think he built was in 71.
Okay, is that what it was?
1970. Yeah.
Why did you decide to jump into the sportsman car when you had so much work to do on your late model?
Well, Frosty wanted to, he'd been helping Skip Furlow. I don't know what year Skip first started, but Gary'd been with Skip, and I don't know, he just wanted to build his own, I guess, how it happened. He built it, him and my brother Billy had one. They built two that year. So that's how I got into it. I really wasn't never that crazy about the sportsman division, because I figured it took away from the late models, you know. That's why
Say that.
I never got into it. You know, I'd drive once in a while. I drove for Dick, of course, one time. I drove for Ronnie Blackmer one time. When Ronnie got hurt, I got a picture with me in the car. I've been going to tell him all these years. He thought it was Blackmer in there. Hell, it was me in that car.
Did you ever get paid? That's what I wanted to know.
Yeah, he insisted. Yeah, I remember, because he got on the running board. You know, we come around after took the flag around, and he says, "We got $117. He knew exactly how much money it brought in.
Ronnie told us that if he won the heat, the semi, and the feature in a night, he could make $117.
Yeah.
He knew exactly.
Yeah.
And he said that was big money. He said he wasn't even making $75 working all week down in the shop.
Yeah, because
So
it was two nights too.
117 twice a weekend.
That's right.
He said he wondered why he even went to work.
Yeah, and in the early days too, it was the old Chevy 6-cylinders. It wasn't into like the 292s and stuff. So those motors wasn't too expensive either. I forget, he told me one time, like one, it had a cylinder that was pretty well worn or something. They used to put rings in it about once a week or something. Had to often stick rings and bearings there. I don't know about bearings, but the rings in it.
Bob, after you retired, did there ever come a time where you said, you know, maybe I quit too early. I could still do this. I mean, did you ever wish you maybe hadn't quit?
No, not really. You know, sometimes, like I say, I go up there and get them funny ideas. I think maybe I ought to try it. But when I quit, especially, I said, never will I ever put a penny of my own money into a race car, you know.
What did you do to occupy your time? I mean, that was all, you lived and breathed and ate racing. And how do you fill that void?
One thing I did is I went to work as a tool maker, and you don't have much spare time there. We used to work, you know, it was at least 45 hours a week, and you really worked as many hours as you wanted to, basically. So I wasn't.
Now, tell me about what it's like to be a father who's watching his son race. What kind of emotions do you have watching Tommy?
Well, it's scary. I must say that. You know. Other than that, I don't know. You know, I try to tell him, well, no, I wouldn't have done that.
How does he
Get down,
how does he take that?
Oh, he don't listen to me at all. He says that's old school.
Oh, okay.
You're quite a shadow, though. I mean, the reality is, Bobby Schnars is Bobby Schnars, and to be the son of Bobby Schnars is, you know, it's a shadow.
It's hard on him to. But I mean, I started at a very young age, and you know, like I say, I was into the mechanics of it. We even did a lot of my own engine work and stuff. So you know, I just kind of like, I could try a camshaft to stick it in there, and I knew the first night whether I thought it was any good or not. You know, I didn't monkey around and stuff like that. So.
Did your boy Tim ever race?
Yeah.
We were trying to remember that. We couldn't come up with it.
Yeah, he ran in the Spectators one year there at State Line. He did quite well, Tim did there. He built his own car and everything there, but after the first year, then he got married, and since that, he figured he'd spent enough money on it, I guess, in 1 year. Got out.
Did you have a favorite car? Was there one car 1 year that, you know, that really, I mean, you won with a lot of different
well,
cars
that
over the years
old Camaro we had. Well, it started out. He built a Pinto there, and that was like '73 maybe. And Gary actually built it. We used the Camaro front stub of the car and some side rails out of a Chevelle where it ducked out, and then when it come back in again, it had 55 Chevy or 57 Chevy rear rails back there on it. So it was a leaf spring car. So when State Line opened the rules up in, would that be 74 maybe? We used that chassis that had been under that Sportsman car. You know, everybody says, well, you got that modified chassis in there. Well, yeah, it'd been under the Sportsman, but it was a, you know, it was a Chevelle chassis on the front, and the motor was back up where it belonged. So that one chassis, I believe, won 68 feature races between when it was under that Sportsman car and the late model. Most of them was in the late model because I think I only ran that Sportsman 1 year maybe.
When you ran your Javelin, Bob, did you have an actual Javelin chassis, or was that just a Javelin body on a Chevelle chassis?
Well, it had the Chevelle front section spliced into it, something like a Camaro has. But a Javelin was a unit body thing. So yeah, it had the Chevelle front clip in it. Yeah, but the rest of it was Javelin. The unit body and the rear springs and stuff like that.
How about when you had your Roadrunner? Was that an actual Plymouth frame and the whole 9 yards?
Yeah, that was all. Well, they had a K member on the front of them or something that Chrysler did. It was a steel unit where your A-frames and stuff hooked to. But it was.
You raced against a guy named Billy Schnars. What was he like?
Well, I don't know. I had to ship him out of the country. Billy did great. He moved to North Carolina. That's why I said that.
You also had a brother named Ron that raced briefly, right?
Yeah. Ron raced in. Well, he had a '61 Chevy. I'm not just sure what year it was. Him and Mickey Johnson down here built it right here. We had, I think we had two of them in there this year. It had the cars crossways in the garage here.
Really?
Yeah, right here. Yeah, built them here.
Now, Billy's number was what, 21?
One.
One.
Just one.
Oh.
Yeah, one.
One. Is there a little sibling rivalry out there?
No.
Did you sense it?
No, we all helped one another as much as possible.
Was there much conversation, whether in the pits or otherwise, among the other car owners? Was there a lot of give and take, or did you sort of kind of keep your own counsel?
Oh, we kind of kept our own, I guess. Yeah, really, you kind of keep your own. Can't think of other car owners. Of course, with Billy, Billy was in our console.
Of course.
Bob, was there another driver over the years that you felt you were especially close with, especially friendly with, that, you know, whose friendship you valued over that time?
Oh, what would I? There's always admired Blackie there, his driving ability. And Johnny Whitehead, of course, I kind of palled around with Johnny there through the years. Well, I don't know. I hope I'm not leaving out others to. My memory is not the greatest on some
please.
things.
How about on the other side of things? Bob, was there somebody that you seem to, you know how some cars just seem to be magnets
Yeah.
for each other, and
Yeah.
wherever you are, he was there and he was always a problem?
I don't really can't really say anybody that stands out.
What
I don't
question,
know.
Bobby? We've been here enjoying so much their conversation. What's the question you're waiting for to be asked that we haven't asked yet? You're saying, all right, I wonder if they're ever going to get around to this.
Well, I just wonder if you'd ask how many beers we drank up there. I'm working on it.
Yeah, that wasn't on our list. But I sure as hell would like to know the answer.
I'm gonna tell you
I don't know the
story
answer.
after they turned off the camera, Bob. About your friend Whitehead.
Well, you know, I guess that does beg the question. When the race is over, races are over, the card's over, the cars are all in the pits, the lights are starting to be turned out. What'd you guys do? What as a group? Did you do anything as a group, or did you all kind of just trailer your cars back home and be done with it?
Oh, I don't know. Everybody just to stand around there quite a while and drink some beer and BS. I don't know just exactly anybody that wanted to come over and talk. You know.
So it was social. I mean,
Yeah, sure.
well, did you ever were you involved, or did you ever see much where the pits also is where after a race you kind of gather, you have to drop your car off and get out? Was there any emotions? Did you ever see any sort of pushing, shoving, whether the drivers or the owners or the mechanics sort of get excited after a race?
Imagine there was a lot of it. I don't know. Probably wouldn't tell you if I did remember some of the stuff now.
I think that's the best answer I've heard. That's the same answer we get from everybody.
Oh, yeah.
There's this great pause, and their mind is racing, and they're saying, "Should
Well,
I?"
you come in a lot of time, and one of the crew guys said, "What son of a gun was banging you in the butt out there?" And this, and that. Half the time, I didn't even feel anybody hitting me. You know? A lot of times they stir up trouble. It seemed like
Great answer. Great non-answer. This has been great.
I don't know.
Bobby.
Tried not to get in confrontations with people. I always figured that, you know, if you hit somebody, he's going to be willing to return the favor. And a lot of times you don't want people knocking you around when you're out there. You know, you want to get to the front and go. You don't want to be playing bumper tag there. So try not to get anybody mad at you.
This has been just terrific, Bob. I'm really sorry. I'm glad you opened up your garage here and we can learn about a lot of you. Our goal is to get some of this all put together, and it'll be in a documentary featuring, no doubt, Bobby Schnars, especially now that you got an audio, which is something we've looked all over the place for. Little did we realize we'd find it here in Bobby Schnars. So if we could borrow that
Sure.
would be terrific. We'll get it back to you, but we'd like to get a copy of it.
Sure.
Well, thank you. Thank you so
Good
much.
enough.
This is terrific.
Good enough.
Bob, if you